Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Porsche's 911 generation naming is confusing enough. Let's go back almost 30 years and there was the 993, then there was the 996, the 997, the 991, the 992, and we know that the next generation can't be called the 993 because, well, we had that nearly 30 years ago. When you factor in the amount of available variations for the 992, it gets really, really confusing. In fact, there's currently 25 different variations on the Porsche configurator, ranging from the base model Carrera, that's about £95,000 now, up to the flagship GT3 RS, and that's about £195,000, so almost exactly double the price. And this particular Python green 992 is a Carrera GTS. That kind of sits somewhere in the middle of the base Carrera and the GT3 RS. Retails at £122,000 on the road before options. This particular press car is closer to the £140,000 mark, and we'll go through some of those options once we jump inside. Underneath here, we'll find a 3-litre flat-six twin-turbo engine, produces 480 horsepower and 570 newton-meters of torque. Because it's a Carrera GTS and not a Carrera 4 GTS, all of the power and torque will be going through the rear axle alone. But that shouldn't be too much of an issue because, well, we have massive 21-inch 305 section rear tyres. It's a staggered setup. We have 20-inch on the front axle. When we jump inside, we'll find a 7-speed gearbox, which is nothing particularly new with Porsche, but it's not a 7-speed PDK, it's a 7-speed manual. Porsche claim this will do the 0 to 62 sprint in manual form in just 4.1 seconds and go into a top speed of 198 miles an hour. Jumping inside, it'll be no surprise that this 992 GTS is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. In fact, every single 992 cabin that I've been in, either as a driver or passenger, has ticked so many boxes. The driving position is absolutely spot on, especially with these carbon buckets. There's plenty of space in here. I love Porsche's PCM. I think their dials are just to die for. The steering wheel is always amazing. A lovely thin rim. This one has Alcantara all over it. We have the drive mode down here. A lovely little manual gear stick knob that has R1, 3, 5 and 7 written across the top. It does have a few shortfalls though, and the first one is something I complain about in all 911s, especially that lovely touring that I had at the end of last year. When you're living with these, the cup holders, especially if you've got a manual car, are just next to useless. They really are. They get in the way. They don't hold your drinks particularly well, this one or the one that comes out of the dashboard, and they're nothing as nice as the cup holders that are in the 991 and the 997 generation. But if I'm sitting here complaining about cup holders, then you kind of know what the rest of the level of the interior in the car is, because I'm really struggling to complain otherwise. But let's go through the spec on this particular car before we get it out on the road. As with all press cars I get my hands on, I'm sent out a spec sheet by the press team, and as with so many cars over the past, let's say 12 to 18 months, the pricing on the spec sheet is very different to the pricing that is on the Porsche UK website, and that's because, unfortunately, as we all know, prices are rising so quickly. Just to give you an idea, this particular car was registered less than about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yes, it was ordered a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, but the retail price on the spec sheet for a base Carrera GTS is £111,380. Unfortunately, today it's £122,500. So it's gone up pretty much exactly 10% in price over the last couple of months, which is just, it's scary to think about really. What significant options does this car have? Well, the Python green paintwork, which I'm not sure is available as a, let's call it standard colour like it was a few months ago, but it was about £2,000 when this car was spec'd. This has the GTS interior package at just under £3,000, and that consists, as far as I know, of some extra bits of leather and Alcantara, some contrasting stitching, and a few GTS badges here and there, just to remind you that you're in a GTS. This particular car also has the £6,000 lightweight package. And what's included in that? Well, these gorgeous carbon bucket seats, which I've already raved on about in the past and in today's video. They are brilliant. The backrest is not adjustable, but they are very, very comfortable. And as I found out with that touring that I had and did 3,000 miles in back in the last year, well, they're very comfortable on long journeys too. I'm sure they're not going to suit everyone, but they are very nice to sit in. They're very nice to look at, and obviously they're lighter than the standard sports seats. There are no seats in the rear, so they've been removed. We've got some lightweight glass. We've also got a lighter weight battery, but all of that equates to a weight saving of about 25 kilos, which is a fair amount of weight. It's not a massive amount of weight saving, but it is a fair amount of weight. And when you consider that this car, before that lightweight package, weighs 1,510 kilos, it now means that you have a 992 911, which is a big car with nearly 500 horsepower, and it weighs less than 1,500 kilos. So that's impressive by modern standards. I forgot to say, it also removes some of the sound deadening around the back here, and I'm sure just naturally removing the seats also alleviates some sound to come through the front of the cabin. The only other substantial option that this car's got that's worth talking about is the park assist, including surround view. So that's the camera that looks down on the car. It's really handy if you live in a city, especially because you can get nice and close to the curbs without curbing your wheels. All of those options in the base spec car bring the on-the-road retail price to just under £140,000. It's a lot of money, especially when you bear in mind that this car is missing some essential options for many people, like the nose lift, an upgraded stereo. This has the base spec stereo, which I've heard from people and forums isn't that great. I haven't really tried and tested it myself because I haven't had the car for that long. As with so many 911s, you could carry on adding options all day and all night, and that retail price could keep going up. So you need to draw a line somewhere. And I do like the way this car is spec'd, and on paper, for me at least, this was almost the ideal spec. This was almost the dream 911 for me. It was something that, after trying a number of different variations, I thought to myself, right, rear wheel drive, GTS, with the manual box and the lightweight package, that has got to be the perfect 911 package, especially if you're using it predominantly on the road. As always with my first drive videos, let's test out this car's acceleration figures. Porsche claim it would do the 0 to 62 sprint in 4.1 seconds with this box. Conditions outside are close to perfect. We should have plenty of grip. Being a manual, it's more down to me than the actual launch, but to complicate things even further, in Porsche manuals, when you go for a launch, so foot on the clutch in first gear, foot on the floor, there's a soft limiter there, or launch control limiter, at 3,500 RPM. It's really difficult, in my experience, to nail that launch. So let's see if we can get close to that 4.1. As always, my Racebox Mini is actually timing the 0 to 60 sprint, so we should get close to the 4.1, if not beat it, if we nail that start. The first one, I'm just going to dump the clutch and hopefully see what happens. The car do the work, if you like. I think it should bog down, and then we'll get going. And then we'll come back and do it again, where I kind of almost feather the clutch a little bit, slip it just the once. I'm not going to burn the clutch out, just to see if we can really achieve an impressive 0 to 60 time, because this car is very, very fast, but as with all manuals, it is tricky to launch and tricky to nail that 0 to 60 time. Right, here we go. Everything is switched off. I'm in first gear, foot is hard down on the clutch. Here we go. Oh, it bogged down, There we go. 4.13 seconds with a horrendous start. I mean, off the line, that was terrible. That was tragic. Attempt number 2. This time I'm going to bleed off the clutch, allowing hopefully a bit more power and torque to get to the rear axle before all of that overwhelming grip takes over. Let's see if my technique is any better. Again, we'll use the soft limiter because we don't have really any other options. When you put your foot on the accelerator, it goes to 3,500 RPM. And here we go. Racebox Mini is ready. Off we go. There we go. 3.66 seconds. Oh, yes. I thought I was just about to hit the limiter, but I reckon I changed bang on. It felt brilliant. It launched really well off the line. There wasn't too much slip there. It just allowed that power and torque to feed to the rear axle. Once we got to about 15 miles an hour, you really felt it coming in then, and off we went. Wow, that's impressive. Right, let's go and get out on the road and see what it's like to drive. I really did think this would be my dream 911 in the 992 generation. I briefly got behind the wheel of a GTS two-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive with the manual box about this time last year at Millbrook during an SMMT day. It was a Porsche GB car, but I literally had 15 minutes behind the wheel. I did switch the cameras on. There is a video on the channel, but it was around Millbrook's handling course, which does replicate UK road in many ways, but not in the state of a UK roadway. So the tarmac's really smooth, and cars tend to feel a lot better at Millbrook on that particular road than they do along a road like this or many other roads near me. So although I remember feeling very positive about that car and that spec, it certainly doesn't seem to replicate when you take it onto a normal public road. Also, that particular car had the regular sports seats and was lacking the lightweight package. I remember thinking at the time, if you added those two things, you would literally have the best 911 on the planet. Something I forgot to mention that comes with the lightweight package is the rear axle steering. So let's start by talking about this car's ride and handling. Now, unfortunately, its ride quality, even when you knock those dampers back into their softest setting, is just, in my opinion, too stiff for a UK road. When you combine that stiff ride with 21-inch wheels and the rear axle and tiny low-profile tyres, well, it does get a little bit manic in here at times. The car never seems to settle down. It's always moving around. When you combine that to the four-wheel steer that this car essentially has, well, it always feels a bit too nervous for my liking. I think four-wheel steer is brilliant on bigger, longer, sportier cars like Porsche's Panamera or Audi's RS6. They've got massively lengthy wheelbases. When you add rear-wheel steer to the rear axle, well, it shortens that wheelbase and it makes the whole big car feel a bit more agile. But in a 911, even a 992 that has grown substantially compared to, let's say, a 993 or a 997 generation, it doesn't to me, feel like it needs it. And when you do add rear wheel steering, the car just feels a little bit too lively. You combine that with the overly stiff ride and it's just a bit frantic in here. And I don't know, it's exciting, but you wish you could just turn it off or tone it down and set everything into comfort to make the driving experience a bit more relaxing when you want it to be. You don't always want to be on it, and this car doesn't seem to have an off switch for those times that you don't want. But that's not to say this car doesn't handle well. When you find a good section of road that isn't too bumpy and undulating, well, it sticks to the ground like the very best 911s do. We don't have that glorious double wishbone front suspension setup that I had in that Touring or you get in a 992 GT3, and you do notice that straight away. In fact, the first 20 minutes in this car I wasn't sure what was going on in the front end because it just didn't feel right. Then I remembered that I spent 2 weeks and 3,000 miles in that GT3 Touring, and it's night and day better in one of those. The capability that this car has, especially on corner exit, just goes, it's just so fast. I mean, let's get onto that engine and talk about that. It is the thrust master, it's the thrust machine. Any gear, put your foot down, and it is just so quick. Remember, it has almost 600 newton meters of torque that is available from about 2,200 RPM, which we're pretty much at now. So when you put your foot down, you feel that instantly. When you combine that with less than 1,500 kilos of weight, it really is a fast piece of kit. I want to say that it would absolutely destroy a GT3 in a straight line, even though it's down 30 horsepower, because it has a lot more torque. And that torque is available from so low as we've just mentioned. So yeah, its in-gear acceleration, if you like, is just unreal. Even fourth from 2,000 RPM, we're doing 40 miles an hour, put my foot on the floor, there's 50, there's 60. It's just so quick. If you're pushing on, this car is an absolute rocket ship, just like pretty much every 992. It's just you've got to be on your A game because it does move around a lot and you've got to keep hold of this wheel. And the rear steering, I'm really not convinced that it helps because it's such a precise tool without that rear axle steering, but maybe that's just me. What does it sound like? Well, it's not very loud on the outside, but on the inside, I think it sounds pretty good for something that's on sale in 2023 with all the modern day restrictions, the OPF filters, etc. As always, Porsche have made the best out of a bad situation. Of course, it's nothing like a GT4 RS, but that car is so loud, and in fact, if you're using that car regularly, it would definitely give you long-term hearing issues. I remember that one that I had just for the day, and I can still hear my ears ringing from that, and that was well over a year ago. So there is enough volume and sound in here. It's not the most sonorous of engines, but when you sort of consider that it is a twin turbo as well, I think it sounds better than a lot of cars. And you do hear a lot more induction sound, etc. And I'm guessing a lot of that is because they've got rid of some of the sound deadening in here with that lightweight package. But, and yes, there is another but as we hit this coarse bit of road, 992s in general suffer from lots of cabin noise, unwanted cabin noise, if you like. And unfortunately, getting rid of those seats and that sound deadening, probably making the glass a bit thinner, etc., just enhances that sound in the cabin, and really don't want it in here. It's okay when the road's a bit smoother or the tarmac's a bit smoother like it is here, but as soon as you hit a coarse bit of tarmac, it is deafeningly loud in here, and that's tyre roar. And one thing you don't want in your car is excessive tyre roar, because it's just like a thunderstorm. Let's just have a bit of fun into this section. Oh, you can just feel it loading up so well. 911s are so good. Oh. It's too fast. It's too fast. If you find yourself going for another gear, you're going too fast. And that's my biggest disappointment with this car, is the manual gearbox. I can't believe that I'm saying that in general or on a video. I can't actually believe I'm saying it. But I think the reason that this package just doesn't seem to work very well for me is because of this 7-speed box. In isolation, it's a brilliant box. It's not as good as the 6-speed. It's not as metallic as a 6-speed box. That metallic change seems to have been replaced with more of a plasticky feeling change. I can't feel any metalwork in there like I can in a box in the GT3 or even a GT4. It's still a lovely action though, and it blows something like the gearbox in my M2 away and in its dust. It's miles better than anything BMW's ever offered, but it's not as good as the 6-speed. And what really confuses me about this box is its ratios. First gear will do 47 miles an hour. Second gear will do 78 miles an hour. And third gear, I've worked out looking at where the revs are, it will do well over 120 miles an hour. That's third gear. You've got 7 of them. So when you're piloting along your favorite road like this, well, you don't really use much more than second and third, and that's a little bit frustrating. And when you're using this car sort of driving around, commuting if you like I did on the way down here, my hour's drive, I found myself forgetting that I was in a manual. I would leave it in 4th or 5th, use the torque, and because of the relative lack of sound in here, especially when you're in normal, I forgot that I was in a manual. It was only when I came to a set of traffic lights or a roundabout that I'd almost stall it. And yeah, you could argue that's a good thing, that all that torque's available everywhere, so you can leave it in any gear, but in a way it kind of detracts from having a manual. And I have been sitting here thinking, what would it be like with the 7-speed PDK? And I actually think it would be a better car. It would suit the 7-speed PDK. This twin turbocharged 3 litre would suit the PDK better than the 7-speed manual. And yeah, I think that's one of the only times I'm ever going to say that, hopefully, about a manual and an auto car. But I really do think that in this application, the 7-speed PDK would probably be a better option. I hope this video hasn't come across in too much of a negative way. I think Porsche's 992 is a brilliant sports car. In fact, it is undoubtedly the best sports car on sale today, and it's great that they do so many variations and models, especially in this day and age. Just this particular car, this particular spec, didn't tick all the boxes that I wanted it to tick. I think my expectation for it was maybe way too high, and spending a bit of time behind the wheel of it just disappointed me a little bit in a few areas. That's not to say it isn't brilliant, because it is, and that is probably no surprise to anyone out there. Next month I'm actually getting my hands on another base 911 that has 0 options, and taking it abroad. So hopefully getting back in that will remind me just how good the base car is, and hopefully confirm my feelings of some of the shortfalls of this particular model. But anyway, I'm keen to hear your feedback, and I'm sure there's going to be a few GTS owners out there that might disagree with me. Maybe there'll be some that do agree with me. It's always difficult comparing models when you haven't driven them back to back. You know, it's always a large gap between the 911s that I've tried. one day it'd be nice to try them all back to back on the same bit of road, and then I could give you some real accurate feedback. But there's no denying this is a brilliant car. It's just not the model and the spec that I would go for, although I really do like the green. Guys, thanks a lot for watching as always. I'll see you on another video very, very soon. Until then, take it easy.